Welcome back, everybody, to Confessions of a Racial First Grader. I'm Rob, and I'm a racial first grader. And we're continuing history class, and we've kind of gotten up to 1954. So what happened? Brown versus the Board of Education. What happened? Brown is a little third grade girl named Linda Brown. Board is the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. And essentially said, why can't I go to the school by my house? And that's because it was for white kids. And so the NAACP, Thurgood Marshall, brought this case to the Supreme Court, but it was behind a dozen other cases where the NAACP Legal Defense Fund had said, okay, Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896 said separate but equals fine. They went, great. Here's what we're going to do. It's separate, all right. We're going to make you prove equal. So a school district would be having a problem and they would bring it to an appellate court or bring it to the federal bench and they would say, oh yeah, it's separate. Let me show you pictures of unequal. Here's the white school. Here's the black school. Here's the printout of the bank statement of the white school. Here's the printout of the bank statement of the black school. And the Supreme Court justices are like, well, I guess y'all need to bring that money and you need to pay these attorneys and you need to pay these people and the money needs to be equal. And Earl Warren's Supreme Court, so Earl Warren, former governor of the state of California, and he was just like, oh, come on. They had to deal with 10 or 11 or 12 of these same things where they're just looking at separate but unequal. And the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was saying, we're going to show you. You're going to see that this is a lie, that separate but equal is rubbish. And it's rubbish everywhere in America. It's not just in Birmingham, right? It's in Hartford and it's in Bakersfield, and it's in Houston, and it's in Seattle, and it's everywhere. Separate but unequal. So finally, little Linda Brown versus the Board of Education, unanimously the Supreme Court, and the story about how Earl Warren got it to be unanimous was kind of an interesting story. It's worth reading about. It's also worth just looking up Brown v. the Board of Education. You're a first grader, right? We're saying why? I want you to look it up. But they say unanimously that Plessy versus Ferguson and separate but equal is no more. So how did America finally in the 50s now respond to the kind of snap of all of the Jim Crow laws and all of the black codes and all of the new constitutions of the Confederate States and Plessy versus Ferguson and all of American apartheid all the way up to 1954? What did America do? Well, in education, I want to give you two examples and then I'll let you go and I'll let you hunt it down because, of course, you're a first grader and you are investigated. You're inquisitive. You're sniffing around trying to figure out what's going on. The first one is Prince Edward County, Virginia. So that's halfway between Roanoke and Richmond, in the middle of nowhere in Virginia. And what did they say after Brown versus the Board of Education? Well, if we have to integrate our schools in all haste, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cancel public education in the county. Cancel it. We're going to take the resources, we're going to give it to a private school, and that private school can invite whoever they want, and they're not under the control of the federal government. And they're going to invite white kids. They didn't have public school for black kids in Prince Edward County, Virginia. It's in Virginia, right? This isn't in Guam, right? This is Virginia for 5 years. There was no public education for black kids for 5 years because they couldn't stomach it. They couldn't imagine having to have a black child sit next to a white child. Like, which white parent's going to say that's okay? to the point where, let's look nationally at America. 10 years on from 1954 to the 1964-65 school year, what percent of American school children went to integrated classrooms, K through 12? So let's compare it with apartheid, right? Apartheid South Africa had 3% of their students going to integrated classrooms in the 64-65 school year. What percent of the students went in the United States, like not in the Confederacy, right? But all over, Vermont, New Hampshire, Minnesota, right? Washington, everywhere. What percent of American schools were integrated? What percent of kids went to integrated classrooms in the 64-65 school year? 1%. 1. We were 3 times as racially twisted as South Africa. That's nuts. What does that mean? That means that my parents said, no, my kid's not sitting next to a black kid. And that parents, and that was in Ohio, and parents all over America went, no, we're not going to do it. That apartheid had seeped so deep into our bones in America that 10 years of enforcement, nope, we're not going to do it. So let me encourage you to look it up. Breathe. This is one of those things where we continue to need to have patience and understand that it's a marathon, but American apartheid, it's a real thing.